February's here, spring is just around the corner, although it doesn't really feel like it around here. Pretty soon the daffs and the bluebells will be out in full force, so that means we need to get our houseplants fit and firing and ready for the growing season ahead. So these are the things I'm doing in my home and why, so come along. The Monstera deliciosa is easily the world's most popular houseplant, and in this house too, I've got loads of them dotted around. The more Monsteras I have, the better, but I've only got one Monstera albo, which is the variegated edition. It's this guy up here growing up this trellis trellis. So this guy is very expensive. This was given to me free in an unboxing video I did last year, lucky me. But I would like one or two more of them, so I'm not going to run out and buy one. I'm going to chop it up and propagate it instead. So propagation is dead simple. All you need is your plant and some pruners and then something to put your cuttings in. So I'm going to choose this glass of water that I've pre-filled. All we need to do, I'm going to take a top cutting of this Monstera albo. So all we need to do on the plant is locate the highest node on the plant. You can see that there's an aerial root. So the stem will have a leaf growing forwards out of the stem and then an aerial root coming out of the back, and there'll be a line on the stem. And our job is just to cut underneath there, which will be about there. So that is our cutting. So we've got a node there, and that's where the roots are going to grow out of. And then, because this is a top cutting, there's no need for it to grow a new stem. If I was to take another cutting here of another piece with a leaf on, then it will need to grow a new stem because I've chopped its head off basically. But this guy, once it grows roots, it will just continue to send out leaves from the latest leaf that it grew, which would be from this one here. So we don't need that anymore. That will continue growing. A new stem will sprout, and I'll get it to train on this trellis trellis. So we can pop that to the side there. And this guy, we don't need to do anything really. It's dead simple, anyone can do this. Normally you wouldn't have so much leaf tissue, but I think it should be okay in this instance. I want to keep the leaves because they're nice and variegated with some nice fenestrations in. So all we need to do is just pop it into our glass of water. So that will start rooting in probably maybe 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. It does depend on the season a little bit. Now that we're in February, it might take a little bit longer. I'm gonna give it some good light where I tend to keep most of my cuttings. And once it grows roots, I'll pot it up into some soil and I'll have a brand new plant on my hands. So I've got over 200 plants in my home, but one of my absolute favorites is this guy. This is a nepenthes or a pitcher plant, and if you're not familiar with it, it's a carnivorous plant. So it will grow traps like that one from the end of the leaves, and it contains digestive enzymes. So the insect will come along and try to lick the sweet nectar at the top, fall in and get trapped and then die a horrible death. So the traps on these guys do eventually go by the wayside, as you can see there. So I've got a few on this plant that I need to sort out. Pruning in the nepenthes is dead easy. Just need some nice clean pruners. These have been washed, not really been sterilised. I don't think that's necessary. Just give them a good clean. So these pitchers, they grow from the ends of the leaves, of course. All we need to do is just go to the very tip of the leaf and just prune off the pitcher like so. We don't want to prune off the entire leaf until it gets to a stage where it's looking a bit ropey and a bit brown, like these two here. So we can pull those off because these are still photosynthesizing for the plant, giving the plant energy. So we only want to prune off the pitchers. So there's a couple here that I can take off, just on the end of the leaves, like so. So you will end up with a few leaves that don't have pitchers, but that's fine because new pitchers do always tend to grow out of the top. So these are new pitchers here. There's just one just starting to form out of that new leaf. So is there any crispy brown? So I only tend to prune them when they get very crispy brown like these ones are. So that one's pretty much gone by the wayside entirely. It's pretty much all brown. I don't prune them off when they're a little bit brown. Like this one here is just starting to turn. just starting to lose some vigour. It's not as red as, say, this one here, but I'm going to leave it because it can still catch its prey and it can still feed nutrients to the plant. So I'm going to leave that one on there. And I think I've pruned all of these pitchers. There's a leaf here that I just want to get rid of. Doesn't want to come out, so I'm going to go in with my snippers. There we go. Just want to cut things like that out, just to tidy up the plant and make sure that improves airflow and all that kind of stuff for the plant. So there's a pitcher there that started to form that's gone brown. So I'm not sure why that is, but I'm going to prune that off. Just get rid of that. There you go. That has tidied up the plant nicely. If you're a subscriber to the channel, then you'll know just how much I hate fungus gnats. And fungus gnats need soil to live in, to procreate, to multiply and conquer your home, which they seem to have around here. But it's driving me up the wall, so I'm contemplating just putting all my plants in a semi-hydro mix, which is leca or pon, or even just perlite, or even just water. But I want to see how certain plants cope being in semi-hydro before I make the move. So I've got this snake plant, Star Canyon Granite it's called, which is a very unusual plant. Now, snake plants normally don't like to sit in wet soil, do they? They hate having wet feet. So I want to see how this guy will fare in a semi-hydro setup. So this snake plant has been recently potted up into here, so it should be fairly easy to get the soil off the roots. So the idea with transferring to semi-hydro is you want to get rid of all the soil that is knocking around the roots, relatively clean, doesn't need to be absolutely sparkling or anything like that. Just get the clumps off, because the plant is going to be living in basically a reservoir of water and we don't want that going murky brown, so we want to get rid of the soil as much as possible. Which it looks like this is going to be a nice easy job for me, because it was recently, this is a cutting that I took from the mother plant. I separated it into different plantlets. So yeah, that is most of the soil off. You might, if you've got an older plant that you move into leca or a pon or something, then you might struggle to get all the soil off the roots. But you just want to take your time, maybe get a stick and kind of poke it through. And then when you got to this kind of stage, you just want to dip it into your sink and clean off the roots, which is what I'm going to do now. So I've now given these a rinse, so that most of the dirt is off the roots. There's still bits of dirt on there, so that's not an issue. I'm going to use the same pot. Well, I was going to, but that's a bit dirty, so I might just use a different pot. I might use that one, that's nice and clean. So the important thing is to put it in a plastic pot with holes, so that when the plant sits in a reservoir of water, it's able to wick up to the leca and keep the plant hydrated. So it's dead easy to repot a plant into semi-hydro. Not nearly as much faffing around as when you're repotting into soil. So you just want to hold the plant more or less where you want it and then just dump in your leca or pon. So this leca has been rinsed by me in the garden, just to clean it off, because when the leca is in the bag, it's very dusty. Leca is just hardened clay balls, by the way. So you want to clean it off in the garden to stop the soot from the clay going down your drains and potentially blocking your drains. So filling it up near enough to the top. That's about right. Give it a tap just to get the leca all in the nooks and crannies. And that is it. Now you can put it into your decorative pot, like so. And then I did have a jug of water somewhere down here. So you want to fill your cash pot with about a third of the way up, like so. So it'll always sit there And that'll just keep the leca nice and hydrated for the roots to draw on some water and nutrients. So this water, I've added some hydroponic fertilizer. You want to give it some feed because the plant is solely relying on the water that you give it. So you want to make sure that it has some nutrients available. So I'm now going to keep an eye on how this snake plant does in semi-hydro, and I'll keep you updated. So this is the first year that I've been growing amaryllis as a houseplant in my home, and I've got to say I'm well impressed because look at these ones, absolutely stunning. So I first brought them to my channel in my November chores video, and if you planted them at the same time as me, then you would have noticed quite quickly that when they shoot up and they start to bloom, they become quite top heavy. Like this one is starting to become quite top heavy, and when they open up they tend to flop right over and you're in danger of breaking the stem. So we need to do something about this ASAP. Now there is 1,000,001 ways that we can support this amaryllis, but it's just important to get the job done however you're going to do it. It's a little bit awkward for me because mine is living in this terracotta pot, which is a bit of an awkward shape to stick anything in there that I can support with. Because an amaryllis bulb wants to be quite snug in its pot, which is why I chose this quite small pot. But it leaves me a bit limited on what I can use to support this spike, flowering spike. So what I've chosen are these two bamboo skewers. And what I've been doing, I have been putting one over there and then one here, like so, bringing them together and then tying the amaryllis to it like so. It's a little bit awkward because of the shape of the pot. That's my excuse anyway. So I've got some green Velcro plant tape. You can just buy that on Amazon, I think, or any other plant shop, I guess. So just need to trim this. I'll probably leave it actually. So I do need 3 hands for this. This is the old spike, by the way, from the old flower that has since gone by the wayside. So I'm going to go on this end like so. The reason I'm using 2 is because if I can't really use 1, because if I use 1 it's still going to be leaning, so I need 2 to create some tension. So that is the method behind the madness. So you just want to wrap it around the stem and the ties. Like I say, you need 3 hands for this. And voila, there you go. That's not too bad. Not too bad at all. So I just have to watch out because once these open, they tend to flop over. So it might press onto these spikes and it might rip the flowers open or something like that. So I might have to trim these back with some pruners, but I'll keep an eye on that as these open. Job done. Up here on this bamboo shelving unit, I've got a bunch of monsteras, but I've also got this monstera cutting. So I actually took this at the beginning of winter, I believe, a few weeks ago, and it's successfully rooted. Nice white roots on there. Some of them are sprouted from the aerial root. So this just goes to show that you can successfully prune and propagate a monstera or any other plant during winter. As long as you give it enough light and it's not too cold in your house, then it will successfully root. So this guy needs potting on. There are a few things we'll need to get right. So you'll want to pot on your monstera cutting, or any other cutting really, when the roots are a good couple of inches long at least, which these are. In an ideal world, the monstera root should be a little bit longer than that. I would have liked to have left it in maybe a week or 2 longer in that glass, just to develop these roots a little bit further, especially that one there, because that's quite short. But anyway, it should be okay. So I've got a nice clear plastic pot. Choose a nice suitable size for it. So it's a little bit big really for the amount of roots that we have here, but it's quite a big tall cutting. So I'm going to opt for that. I'm going to watch my watering. So that's going to go in there. I'm using Cybotanica's Universal Mix. which you can get a 10% discount off their products with a link in the description to this video. So the first part of the task is to line up the plant like so, and then just dump a load of soil around. It's dead easy. So I like to go around. You want to fill it to cover the roots. You don't want to bury the stem too much, because otherwise that has the potential to rot the stem when you water the plants. But you do want to support it as well, so it's a bit of a balancing act. That seems okay. So the good thing about these clear plastic pots is that you can have a little look around to see if there's any pockets in the soil, which doesn't appear to be there, so that's good. I'm just giving it a little press just to get rid of any air gaps, because it does tend to compress when you add the water. So that is that. And then you want to give it a good drink. So the aim of the game when you're potting up a cutting that is rooted in water is to keep the soil moist for the first couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. Because this plant has grown water roots, it's not had a chance to adapt to soil, so it needs an adaptation period, which is 2 or 3 weeks, which is why we keep the soil nice and moist for that time period. And then after that time period, just start to wean it off, let it dry out a bit more until you go onto your regular watering schedule for your Monstera. So I'm going to find a decorative pot for this bad boy and put it somewhere nice and bright to start growing stems. If you've got things going badly wrong with your houseplants, like this Dying's Easy plant that I've got on my hands, then make sure you download my free plant troubleshooting handbook. It will tell you what the potential problem is, why it's happened, and most importantly, what you can do about it. It's in the description. Propagating plants is one of the best ways to grow your indoor plant collection for free. But did you know that you can propagate a cactus just as easily as any other houseplant in your collection? So I've got one here that is just right for propagation, and it's dead easy, so let me show you how. So propagating a cactus is dead fun in my book, and dead easy as well. So a cactus like this will grow little pups from the kind of big bulbous plants that are growing from the soil. So these little ones here, basically little pups, aren't they? We can twist these off quite gently with rubber coated tongs like so. So we can do as many as we want. I've got loads on here. I could do probably 10 of them on here. In fact, I might just do 2. Do this bigger one here as well. Just carefully twist it off like so. So I've got 2 there. So we can put that to the side. And now I've got a little pot here filled with Cybotanica's Universal Mix. I could use a succulent mix or a cacti succulent mix, but I think the Universal Mix is plenty good enough. And then it's dead simple really. The main issue you have will be trying to stop stabbing yourself. So just make a little indentation in the soil. All you want to do is just rest these on top of the soil. You don't want to bury them, like so. Just press it in. It's a bit tricky with these rubber tongs because is it the tines? Is that what you call them on a cactus? They want to go into the rubber, which sticks, which is proving to be a little bit trickier. But we will carry on, so we can add the second one next to it. Just holding that carefully. See if I can take these off actually. I can. A little bit dirty, but I want to press it in like so. And I'm just getting the soil just pressed up around it So that will root just fine like that. No issues whatsoever. So we just want to give it a little dribble of water over the soil, just to start the root making magic, basically. Like so. Put that somewhere nice and bright on a sunny windowsill, and they'll soon grow much bigger, and then you'll have to repot them into a larger size pot. So with spring just around the corner, it's a great time to have a think about how you're going to display your plants for the growing season when they really start to kick on in growth. So I'm in my living room here, and this area behind me is a little bare for my taste. I want it more planty. And if you're a subscriber to the channel and you saw me in my old house, then you would have seen the devil's ivy that I had in my living room that was snaking all around. So I want to achieve a similar thing here. So I've got these plants here on this console table, and I've got these cuttings, 2 cuttings of devil's ivy, and these are actually from the old house, the old devil's ivy that was snaking around the dining room. So these are, I think they're rooted in here, so I'm just waiting for new stems to grow, but I've got them on this console table right in front of this grow light. So the idea is I'll eventually start to grow stems. I'm going to get it to climb up this wall here. I'm going to support it somehow, maybe a trellis trellis or maybe some pins in the wall, and it's going to climb all the way over this doorway, and then let's go over there, and who knows where it's going to end up. And then similarly, I've got a Hoya Lisa here, which is the exact same setup I had in my old house, and that is going to grow the other way, just like I had it in my old house. So it's going to be a bit of a jungle vibe here. Not sure what Mrs. Sheffer was going to say about that. I've not run it past her. And then over here, I've got Adansonii over an archway that I want to grow all the way over it. So it's going to really kind of increase the jungle vibe settings of my house. One of the downsides of having a planty YouTube channel is that you sometimes kill a plant inadvertently. So I recently did a care guide on this guy, would you believe, the ZZ plant, and this guy featured in it, and he was loud and proud. He had lots and lots of stems, looking much better than he is now. So in that video, I was showing how to water the plant correctly, and to get lots of shots, I was having to pour quite a lot of water into the soil. This is my excuse, by the way. And I think it's basically given up the ghost from all the water I was giving it. So lots of stems have gone. I mean, look at the state of that one. It's gone complete mushy mess. So there is one stem still standing, and it's quite firm. So I'm hoping we'll be able to rescue this bad boy. Right then, this sorry state of a plant. I'm almost scared to go near it, to be honest. God knows what I'm going to find in here. So, just looking in there to see if there's anything dodgy going on, but there isn't. Does smell quite bad. So I'm going to get these bits that have fallen off. There was quite a lot of stems on this plant a few weeks ago, but they've all one by one gone by the wayside, and things like that's happened. Not good, but hopefully I can save this. But let's have a look in the pot and see what the damage is. Pop that there. Okay, what have we got? Yep. Roots are just, I mean, that's a rhizome. It's completely burst and gone by the wayside. So that's not good. All of them have. Crumbly mess in here. Aha. There was one good rhizome, which is attached to this stem that is still firm, I think. But the problem is it's a little bit ropey. There it is. So potato-like rhizomes of this plant. That's hanging on by a thread. That's a shame. What to do? There's rotten on the top there. I think what I might do is to rip that off like so. It is starting to rot at the base of the stem just there. So I'm basically going to propagate this plant now. So I'm going to cut it back like so. I'm going to pop that into soil, because that wasn't really usable. Nothing usable in that pot, unfortunately. But these things happen, we live and learn. Don't give your ZZ plant tons of water, even if you're doing it for a video. Okay. So, I'm going to pot it into here. I'm going to propagate this plant basically. So, I did have a pot somewhere, but I've lost it. I'm just going to pop that in there and fill some soil around it. And to save this cutting, I'm going to not water it for maybe even 2 or 3 days. Maybe even longer actually. Because I could have let that cut end callus over, would have been a good idea, especially with a ZZ plant, to let it dry out and heal before adding it to the soil. But the other way of doing that is adding it to the soil and just not watering the soil for a little while, a few days. But I might give that a week or so without watering it, and hopefully that stem piece will grow roots and I can save this plant. So I'm going to put that somewhere nice and bright. Towards the end of last year, I did a plant hacks video, and this guy featured this Peperomia obtusifolia variegated, and in it, he had a broken stem. So in that video, I showed you how you can put a stick next to a broken stem, put some tape around it as a brace, like a broken arm, and it should heal itself. It looks like that's exactly what's happened here. So if we can take these tape off the stick, take the stick out, and this stem has fully healed itself. So you can see where the broken bit was. It looks like it's hanging on by a thread, but there are new leaves growing out of the top. So it just shows if you've got a stem that you accidentally break and you don't want to lose it, just put something firm next to it with some plant ties and it should heal itself. At the end of winter, my Tradescantias always look like this, a crispy brown mess. Something to be ashamed about. All the leaves are going crispy brown and falling off. This is just something that happens during winter with this plant. But every year I do the same thing to rejuvenate it, to get it looking its best during spring and summer. Let me show you. Now, if you're not familiar with the Tradescantia, any plant in that family, then these plants are hands down the quickest and easiest plant to propagate, to root. They literally take days, so easy. So we're going to use that to our advantage to reset this plant. So you could mess around trying to cut it back and trying to save it, but what I like to do, I like to start afresh by taking lots of these cuttings. So I'm not really thinking about it too much. I'm just locating some healthy stems with some healthy leaves and cutting some nice pieces off. So I'm going to go through and do that quickly. Okay, now that we have got lots of our cuttings, we don't need to throw that away. We could go further and clean it right back, and maybe even cut it right back and save that, and it will grow new stems. Might look a little bit ropey though. But we've got our nice fresh cuttings here. And the next stage, so we've got a nice long piece there. The next stage is just to remove some of the lower leaves, like so. Okay, so they've been stripped of their lower leaves now, and we do that because we're going to add these to the soil, and we don't want the lower leaves to be rotting in the soil and causing problems for our cuttings. So I've got a nice pot of soil here with Cybotanica's Universal Mix. So just to make adding these a little bit easier, I'm just going to moisten the top of the soil. Not too much, I don't want water to go all over my table. And then I've got a trusty chopstick here. Just make a little hole and pop the cutting into the soil. Press around, and we just do this with all our cuttings, filling the pot nice and full, and then we've got a brand new plant, and it will continue to grow more stems, more leaves throughout the spring and summer. So I've got the last two here now, so I am cramming this pot nice and full, because the fuller a Tradescantia pot is, the better. And this pot will look much nicer than the original plant. It only takes a week for these to start rooting in here. Just going to trim that back so that this goes in properly. Get rid of those lower leaves. Like so. So I've already watered the pot. Now we can switch out the old pot that was in a decorative pot. I can pop it in there, and that's it. As if nothing ever happened. Brand new plant, perfect. Now this is a plant that I've been doting on for a good year or so, maybe even longer. This is my Ficus elastica tineke, which is a beautiful plant with variegated leaves. And I've been doting on him, so I've been trying to get him to branch out into a tree-like structure, magnificent beast I want him to be. So he's got lots of stems now, where I've just continually pruned him back. But the problem with this guy, the poor fella, is that I overwatered him. I did the unthinkable. I've been watering him without checking the soil. When I eventually did check, because I knew something wasn't quite right with this plant, the root ball and the soil was absolutely sopping wet. This was a little while ago, maybe a couple of months ago, and it took him a good month, maybe even longer, to dry out the soil. And it's showing me his displeasure by the leaves going brown on the edges, which is a real shame. So I'm going to probably lose these leaves. The top growth is still fine, that's coming out nice, so it is on the road to recovery, but these lower leaves have unfortunately gone brown on the edges, so there is only one thing for it. So to stop this plant from being too ugly, I think I'm going to have to prune some of these leaves off, which is a bit of a shame. I'm a bit worried that once I prune these brown leaves off, it's going to be looking a little bit bare. But we can see how it looks. So when you're pruning a Ficus elastica of any type, it will bleed this white sap, which I actually forgot about before I started pruning. So hopefully it's not going to drip everywhere, but if you're sensitive, if you've got sensitive skin or anything like that, falling off my chair, then it might be a good idea to wear some latex gloves or something. I'm not too sensitive though to things like that. That one might drip over me though. Okay. Is there any more that need pruning off? I might prune that one off. Okay, so I have pruned off the worst offenders, and it is dripping that white sap all over my table, but I'll give it a clean, no worries. So it is looking a bit bare in places, but I think I might be able to get away with it, because once this plant gets nice and tall, which hopefully it will in the next few years, then I might want to defoliate these leaves anyway to stop it looking a bit silly with these lower leaves at the bottom and then quite bushy at the top as well. So I might want to defoliate these anyway, You can, of course, just leave these on the plant because they will continue to photosynthesize, but I just don't like the look of them on my plant, making it look a bit ugly. So I'm gonna pop this back once it stops bleeding on me. Well, that's it for this video. Do let me know the jobs that you're doing to your houseplants at this time of year. If you want to see more videos in this series, then click on the link here and I'll see you there.